Nothing in this podcast is meant for medical advice. Please discuss your own healthcare with your healthcare providers. Thank you. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Midlife is not a crisis, it's a catalyst to your best life. Join me each week for a dose of mental, physical, and spiritual health, life, grief, adventure, and opportunity. It's time to flip the record over. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis with Dr. Amy Lindsey. This is part 2 of creating a bigger problem for yourself. So last episode, I shared about how I created a bigger problem for myself when I was in a deep hole of depression, recovering from my second total hip replacement. And the bigger problem I created for myself was to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, this didn't come out of the blue. This was a lifelong dream. This had been something I had wanted to do since I was 10 years old. And when I finally listened to my soul and my 10-year-old self who told me, hey, remember we wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro? And I made a choice to take that on, then creating this bigger problem for myself got me up out of that chair, physically, mentally, and spiritually, so that I could continue to live a life I love and a life with joy and peace and move forward on my own B-side and be an example to my family, to my kids, and even an example to my clients and patients who had their own struggles with physical and mental health and not knowing how to navigate these midlife hormone changes and body changes and mental health changes that are affecting all of us, all genders. So I want to drill down into this create a bigger problem, because in no way am I saying create big, huge goals for yourself, and then if you don't get them, you're a failure. That is the opposite of what I'm saying. So when you create a bigger problem for yourself, and it comes from this place of listening to your intuition or your soul or your spirit, whatever you want to call it, when it comes from that place, there is a distinct shift from regular goal setting. And this shift is perspective, because now what's on the line isn't just some random goal that you think you're supposed to do to, quote, finally get your shit together, or finally get the health you want, or finally lose weight, because our culture is obsessed with that. And I will get into that in another episode. I do not agree with scale weight equaling health. And that's a whole other episode in the meantime. But that's what we do, right? It comes from a place of shoulds, not a place from desire, not a place from your soul speaking to you. So that's the shift, because now the bigger problem you've created for yourself is your soul goals and dreams are on the line. So let me drill down into what I'm talking about. Typical goal setting creates all or nothing thinking. And when we're in all or nothing thinking, it causes people to push too hard, too fast. It can set people up for failure, or people can burn out really quickly. Or what happens, people are so on that pendulum swing between doing everything they're supposed to do to achieve the goal or crashing and burning and then feeling shame about it, that the goals that they set for themselves seem impossible. So when I created that goal for myself to climb Mount Kilimanjaro on the heels of my second hip replacement, and I registered me and my spouse, what I understood was that this was a childhood dream. What I understood was that it lit me up from the inside. And I was also completely aware of how my point A, where I was sitting in my chair with my leg elevated, with my walker and my cane next to me, where I was literally learning how to re-walk through physical therapy, that I was then going to go climb the tallest mountain in Africa. So I had great humility and respect for this big goal that I was taking upon myself. And I knew that I would have to wake up every single day and do what I could that day. Hey, this is Dr. Amy Lindsey, your host of Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis YouTube channel and podcast. If you want to be more involved with my B-Side community, you can join on School. That's SKOOL. You can join my school community. Look me up, Dr. Amy Lindsey, Welcome to Your B-Side, and request to join. So it started with, of course, walking with my walker, walking with my cane, then walking slowly through my neighborhood, building strength and stability and building up some of, I would say, miles. But at first it took a long time to just walk 1 mile. I remember being in my neighborhood and it took me 45 minutes to walk a mile. And now these days I probably walk a mile in 18 to 20 minutes, right? So it was quite the consistency, or it was quite the baby steps. It was literally one step at a time. I eventually then had to walk up hills and down hills and finally get to the point where I was doing hiking. And then from the hiking, I started building in strength training. And then I started building in hiking bigger mountains and bigger altitudes. And so the point is that there is a shift from all or nothing thinking into what do I have to do today? And every single day, building that endurance of consistency where you can see the beacon, you can see the bigger problem you created for yourself, and that you are literally willing to wake up every day and honor your soul, honor that calling that you have, honor that purpose or that bigger problem that I keep calling it, that came to you from your intuition and from your soul. This doesn't just happen with physical health goals. And I'm a doctor, so I see a lot of people that make these physical health goals, and I watch what happens with that pendulum swing into doing too much too fast, then falling into shame and feeling like they're not good enough and they'll never get there, and then crashing and burning and repeat, right? So what I'm saying is this can happen with anything. This can happen when we anoint ourselves an artist, where we have this dream to make art. We've always wanted to write a play or write our memoir or compose some music or write a poem or anything that's artistic, that is a creative expression. Oftentimes, when we start on that endeavor, we're faced with this all or nothing thinking, and we're faced with creating these big goals and then getting into that pendulum swing where we start creating conditions for ourselves. We start creating timelines and start dates and end dates and all the things that have to be just perfect before we can start, or just perfect before we can get into a kind of mindset to make things happen. And what I'm saying is it's actually the consistency of baby steps. It's actually quite mundane and daily work. It's not in these big dopamine hits of grandiosity. And so here's what I mean by that. So dopamine is a chemical that we all have, and it's part of our reward system, and it helps us survive. And we get these giant dopamine hits when we do things like make a big goal for ourselves, right? That sounds exciting, because if you can think of yourself standing on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, or finishing and publishing your memoir, or writing a song and releasing it, that's a big dopamine rush. But then the actual behaviors that get you from point A to point B can seem daunting, and we can collapse into our shame, and we can collapse into that place where we think that we're not good enough and then give up. Yeah? So here's how to get off of this pendulum of this big goal setting and then crashing and burning. Number 1, your goals need to match your inner dreams and desires. Absolutely, that is number 1. And here's why. Because often on side A of our life, we are following status quo and we are doing things to survive. Our behaviors and our coping mechanisms are there to help us survive. and we're doing what we think we should be doing. So we're setting goals based on what we think we should be doing. We're not listening to ourselves. So that is number one, is go for something that is calling you, and you may have to stop. You don't have to go get a hip replacement like I did, but you may have to just slow down and listen to yourself. Once you have your goal, number two is you have to identify what's in the way of where you are now, point A, to where you want to be, point B. And what's in between that is probably patterns of behaviors and coping mechanisms that you developed through your whole life. And by midlife, you've probably got a whole lot of them. And we were talking about dopamine earlier. When we are low in dopamine, which happens when we feel like we fall into shame, and it also happens in midlife just on a biochemical level. When our hormones start to change, no matter what your gender is, this happens with declining progesterone, this happens with declining estrogens and testosterones. Our dopamine can also start to decline. And so our reward center, which dopamine is in charge of, starts to decline. And so what we do is we start seeking out dopamine hits. And some of those dopamine hits are not maybe in our best interest. Alcohol is a big dopamine hit. Online shopping is a big dopamine hit. Scrolling on your phone is a big dopamine hit, right? But there's nothing wrong here. I'm not here to shame you for that. It's actually very normal that this is what people do. And it's because we have this lower dopamine and we're just trying to feel better. And so when you set that soul goal for yourself, whether it's climbing a mountain or whether it's writing a book or whether it's releasing a song or I don't know, whatever it is, it may not even be or sound that grand, that it comes from your soul, and then you have to face yourself. You have to face the truth about yourself without running away. What are your coping mechanisms and patterns of behavior that have sabotaged you reaching your goals to this point? And maybe going back to number one is something will get you on that path. When you stop making goals based on what you think you should be doing and you start listening to yourself, that might carry you a long way through some of those coping mechanisms, right? Number three is that you have to understand that consistency is an endurance exercise. Consistency means showing up every day and doing what you can every day. And every day you don't need to have big, huge goals to go with your big, huge goal. In fact, they can be little baby goals, but it's something that you know you can achieve. And guess what you get when you achieve a goal? You get more dopamine, right? So replacing these more not serving your highest good behaviors, like the scrolling and the drinking, replacing those behaviors with these small, doable goals will give you dopamine hits. You'll feel proud of yourself. You'll build confidence in yourself with that consistency with some of those baby steps. So you're going to get your dopamine. Rest assured, you're going to get it. So number one, goal has to follow your heart. Number two, you have got to deal with yourself with honesty and not run away. Number three, you have to set up consistency and baby goals that will give you those dopamine hits and that confidence and help you keep going. So, how did climbing Mount Kilimanjaro land me in France? So, right now I am recording this podcast from a farmhouse in France. Then I'm living here temporarily. And climbing Mount Kilimanjaro was the first thing that then landed me in France. And so this is a story where all that magic happens when you start following your dreams and listening to your soul. So what happened was this. My spouse and I both signed up to climb Kilimanjaro. We then had created a child care problem, rather. Our child care problem was we have a 12-year-old, our youngest. Our oldest is off in college, but our youngest, he needed childcare. Someone needed to come drive him to school and take him to soccer and feed him and make sure he was safe and tucked in at night. Or we needed to put him somewhere, find a camp or something. And while we were at the orthodontist, my son and his orthodontist were talking soccer because they both have that love in common. And our orthodontist son plays professionally in Italy. And he told us about a program in Barcelona called Tovo, where they go and they do a residency camp for a few weeks and play soccer. And so, of course, we looked it up, and it was exactly the same time we were going to be in Africa. So that was not coincidence. That was one of those awesome coincidences. So we sign him up, and he's playing soccer in Barcelona, and we're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And trust me, I'm aware of the ridiculous, amazing sentence that is to just say it aloud. I understand how incredible both those opportunities were for me and my spouse and my kid. And an email comes in that, I saw several days later after we came down off the mountain from PSG Academy in France. And PSG Academy was inviting our son to come trial for a week with them in France. So after Kilimanjaro, we fly to Barcelona, and my son and I take a train to France, and he spends a week trialing with the PSG Academy, and then we go home. 3 days later, we got the call that he had been accepted into the PSG Academy in France. So here we are in Seattle, contemplating a move to France, having no idea how we're going to pull this off. But 7 months later, here we are. So when the lesson here is that it's almost like this snowball effect. This wasn't random. France wasn't random. For over a decade, I've had this on my list. I've had living in France on my list as something that I dreamt about, something I wanted to do, and I had no idea how. I had no idea, And the how is actually the thing that can get in the way when you're trying too hard to figure out time and money and other people, and you're just killing yourself and over-mathing and overthinking everything. You actually can get in the way of yourself. And so on your B side, in midlife, when you flip that record over, your access to your total health, physically, mentally, spiritually, is to stop hustling so hard, stop overthinking so much, and just tune in to yourself, tune in to that voice in your head, tune into your intuition. And when you do that, you set yourself up for opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. So I had no idea that my child would then sort of unlock this living in France business, but I had always had it on my list. So my first step was Kilimanjaro. The second step is now living in France. And now I have this great opportunity while I'm here to record this podcast, to play my piano, to write my songs that I've been always wanting to write, to be working on the book that I've always wanted to be working on. And I am set up for it now by just listening to myself and taking opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. So, welcome to your B-side. I sincerely hope that each and every one of you will be courageous enough to take side A, which is status quo, which is all the shoulds of your life, and have the courage to flip that record over to your B side in midlife. Put that needle on that first track and create your life from there. Welcome to your B side. I'm Dr. Amy Lindsey, and I hope you'll listen as I have many more stories about health and life coming your way. This has been another episode of Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis with Dr. Amy Lindsey. Be sure to follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.